911, do you need police, fire, medical?
My daughter's dead. She just had to go in there.
Sir, did she hang herself?
No, she didn't hang herself, but
How old is she?
around her. She's 11 years old.
On November 29th, 2001, a heart-wrenching tragedy struck in Rock Hill, South Carolina. 12-year-old Amanda Cope was discovered lifeless in her own bed, having been strangled to death. Her own father, Billy Cope, made this devastating discovery and was instantly overwhelmed with shock. As the police arrived on the scene to investigate, they were met with a puzzling and suspicious sight. Who could commit such a heinous act against an innocent 12-year-old child, and who quickly became the prime suspect in the eyes of the police? Welcome back to Case Files Unlocked, where we delve into high-profile and lesser-known cases from around the world. Today, we're examining the perplexing case of Billy Cope, a story that takes more unexpected turns than you could ever imagine. If you haven't already subscribed to our channel, please take a moment to hit the subscribe and like buttons. Now, without further delay, let's dive into the intriguing details of this case.
Is she breathing?
Oh, no, she's dead.
How,
She's cold as a cucumber. And,
okay, you don't want to try to CPR or anything on her?
no, ma'am, she's dead. I mean, her mouth is completely shut. She's ice cold.
Okay, when was the last time you saw her live, sir?
About 2 o'clock this morning.
About 2 o'clock this morning. Has she been
1 o'clock this morning.
Has she been sick or anything?
No, ma'am. The thing was just wrapped around her neck.
Was it her bed clothing or her sheet?
It was her blanket. She just had a blanket laying there, and she rolled over and it wrapped around her neck. It's the green thing on the blanket. She laid on the green blanket with a green blanket, and it had a string wrapped around it. I mean, I gotta call my wife.
Okay. Okay, what kind of house do you live in, sir? What color is your house?
It's white, but she's gone on to be with the Lord because she was a Christian. Please, I really
Okay. All right,
I
sir.
have my light on.
All right, sir.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
The chilling recording you just listened to was a harrowing 911 call made by 37-year-old Billy Cope upon discovering his daughter, Amanda, lifeless in her bedroom. In the early morning hours of November 29th, 2001, in Rock Hill, South Carolina, Billy Cope awoke abruptly around 3 a.m., immediately sensing that something was amiss in his home. He noticed the hallway light on, despite distinctly recalling turning it off before retiring for the night. With his wife, Mary Sue, away working her overnight office cleaning job, it was just Billy and his 3 girls, Amanda, Jessica, and Keila, at home. Amanda, the eldest, was 12 years old, while Jessica and Keila were 11 and 7, respectively. As a devout Christian family, they had missed their usual Wednesday church service that evening since Jessica needed extra help with her math homework. Ever the caring older sister, Amanda offered her assistance, and Billy allowed the girls to stay up as long as necessary to complete the assignment. Youngest daughter Kyla went to bed at 9 p.m., while Billy remained with the older girls until 1 a.m., helping them finish their schoolwork. Afterward, the family members retired to their respective bedrooms for some much-needed rest. Billy turned on his CPAP breathing machine, which he used to manage his sleep apnea, and drifted off to sleep. Unexpectedly, just 2 hours later, he was roused from his slumber. Groggy and disoriented, Billy went to check on his daughters. Amanda's door was closed, leading him to surmise that she might have been the one who turned on the hallway light, perhaps after getting up for a drink of water. The other bedroom door was open, revealing his 2 younger girls sound asleep. With his mind at ease, Billy returned to his bed, reconnected his breathing machine, and quickly fell back asleep. The following morning, at 6 a.m., Billy was awakened by his alarm clock. He later recounted that during those intermittent hours of sleep, he had dreamt about the rapture. In this vision, Jesus returned to claim his followers, and he saw Amanda being taken away while he was left behind. Amanda's parting words in the dream were, "Bye, Daddy." Still shaken from the intense dream, Billy quickly rose to check on his daughters. Relief washed over him as he saw his two younger girls still sleeping peacefully, but his moment of comfort was fleeting. As he attempted to open Amanda's door, it was obstructed by the open closet door behind it. Forcing his way in, he was confronted with a heart-wrenching sight: Amanda's lifeless body lying on her bed. Upon touching her, he found her to be ice cold, and the horrifying realization set in that his nightmare had become a reality. He covered her and, still in shock, dialed 911. Paramedics from the fire department arrived within minutes, but their life-saving equipment was futile. Amanda was gone. Jason Dillon from the Rock Hill Fire Department inquired about Billy's thoughts on what had transpired, to which Billy suggested that she might have choked on her blanket due to her history of rolling in her sleep. Detectives arrived shortly after, securing the house as an active crime scene and commencing their investigation. The detectives were immediately skeptical of Billy's response to his daughter's death. His calm demeanor struck them as unnatural, displaying little to no emotion. Before long, the small house was teeming with investigators searching for clues amidst the chaos of the family's cluttered belongings. Amidst piles of clothing, tissues spilling from sinks, and cockroaches scurrying into corners, Amanda's fully clothed body lay on her bed, surrounded by her books and recently developed school photographs. Upon examination, investigators discovered that Amanda had been brutally assaulted, beaten, and strangled to death. Her body bore bruises, and physical evidence was found on her clothing, sparking a complex and tragic investigation. The gathered evidence was intended to aid in identifying the culprit behind the heinous crime. As the police scoured the house for clues, they stumbled upon a peculiar finding. They discovered that there were no indications of forced entry, as all doors and windows remained locked from the inside. This revelation led investigators to deduce that the killer likely originated from within the household. Detectives interrogated Billy, asking his thoughts on Amanda's cause of death. Billy's theory was that she may have been accidentally strangled by her blanket while sleeping, which contradicted the crime scene evidence. Detectives realized they needed to delve deeper into Billy's background. Upon further investigation, they learned that 2 years prior, both Billy and his wife had pleaded guilty to neglecting the proper care of their children. Billy's emotionless response to Amanda's death, combined with his strange explanation and the absence of forced entry, led the police to consider him as the prime suspect. He was promptly brought to the police station for more intensive questioning. Over the next 4 days, detectives subjected Billy to relentless interrogations, totaling over 17 hours. During the first day of questioning, Billy insisted on his innocence more than 650 times, according to the report. He expressed his love for his daughters and claimed that he could never harm Amanda. He attributed his inability to hear anything that night to his loud sleep apnea machine, which drowned out external noise. Investigators found this explanation dubious and persisted in their attempts to extract a confession from Billy, but he remained resolute in his denial. Detectives tried various tactics, including leveraging his faith and threatening him with the physical evidence they had gathered. However, Billy's stance remained unyielding. Eventually, during the second day of questioning, Billy requested a polygraph test, hoping to prove his innocence once and for all. Regrettably, this would mark the beginning of his downfall. Shortly after commencing the polygraph, the tester abruptly slammed his hand on the table, declaring that they had enough to end the examination. He informed Billy that he had failed the test. Leaving him devastated, detectives took advantage of Billy's vulnerability, pressing him to disclose his motivations for harming his daughter. Gradually, Billy began to talk. Billy eventually confessed, but his statements seemed uncertain. The first confession culminated in a signed written statement admitting to the murder of his daughter. However, this was only the beginning. By the end of the fourth day of interrogation, Billy had provided 4 distinct confessions, none of which aligned with each other or the crime scene evidence. Some confessions contained a dream sequence, while others excluded it or presented a different version. The details varied significantly from one confession to another. Despite these inconsistencies and the belief that Billy was severely mentally disturbed, detectives accepted his confessions as the truth. The fourth and final confession entailed a video reenactment wherein the police accompanied him back to the crime scene and recorded his account of the tragic night. Ultimately, due to his numerous confessions, Billy was charged as the sole perpetrator in the murder of his daughter. After several extensive interrogations, Billy retracted all of his confessions and insisted on his innocence in court. Despite his protests, Billy was sent to prison without bail, and it appeared that the case was closed. Over a year had passed since the murder, and many people who knew Billy were now convinced of his guilt. However, Billy still maintained his innocence, and a private attorney named Phil Beatty from Rock Hill was brought on to represent him in court. At first, Beatty believed that Billy was guilty and sought to secure the best plea deal possible to resolve the case. However, after speaking with Billy about his initial interrogation process, Beatty became deeply troubled by what he learned. When Billy's court-appointed public defender, B.J. Barrowclough, came to the police station to see Billy, the police refused to allow him to enter the interrogation room to see his client, which was a clear violation of Billy's rights. The police produced a note that they claimed Billy had signed, stating that he did not want to see his attorney at that time. Despite Barrowclough's protests that Billy may have been coerced into signing the note, the police refused to let him speak with his client. It was not until Billy's fourth confession that Barrowclough was finally granted access to him. Overall, Billy's case is a troubling example of how the legal system can fail to protect the rights of the accused. Despite his proclamations of innocence, Billy was sent to prison without bail, and it was only through the efforts of his private attorney that his rights were eventually upheld in court. When Billy confessed to the murder of Amanda, he had a shocking reason for doing so. The police had threatened him with the death penalty if he didn't sign the confession. Phil Beatty, Billy's lawyer, was appalled by this clear violation of Billy's rights. However, with the confession already signed and submitted, Beatty wasn't sure how this information could help his client's case. In a surprising turn of events, the prosecutor's office called Beatty for a meeting in late 2002. Beatty believed that they wanted to discuss a deal for his client, but what they revealed to him was beyond his expectations. The DNA found on Amanda's body had finally been processed, and it didn't match Billy's DNA. Beatty was both shocked and relieved by this news, as it meant that his client was innocent and had a real chance of winning the case. The prosecutor's office also revealed that they had known within weeks of the murder that the DNA didn't match Billy's, but kept this information to themselves for over a year. Beatty was outraged by this miscarriage of justice and couldn't believe that no one had deemed it important enough to inform Billy's lawyers. When Beatty asked why they had decided to reveal this information now, they told him that they had found a match to the DNA in the system. The DNA belonged to James Sanders, a career criminal with a history of various crimes. Sanders had moved into the same neighborhood as the Copes just 2 weeks before Amanda's murder and had lived only 2 blocks away from Billy's family. There was no evidence to suggest that the two men knew each other, and they were an unlikely pair. Billy Cope was a socially isolated, 385-pound white man, whereas Sanders was a career criminal. In conclusion, the revelation of James Sanders' DNA was a turning point in Billy's case. It proved his innocence and shone a light on the injustice he had faced. The shocking revelation of the police's knowledge of the DNA not matching Billy's only added to the sense of miscarriage of justice. In the wake, the tragic murder of Amanda shook the lives of her family members, including her father, Billy. Although he was a devout Christian and aspiring preacher, his daughter's death left him in a state of shock. Meanwhile, James Sanders, an African-American career criminal and drug addict, had just been released from prison when he committed or attempted to commit 4 more sexual assaults in the neighborhood over 6 weeks. After DNA evidence was found at the crime scene, Billy's attorneys realized he was factually innocent. They questioned him about why he had provided false confessions to the police when he was interrogated after the murder. Billy explained that he had been sure of his innocence, but his emotional state after losing his daughter may have made him appear emotionless to the police. He also disclosed that he had provided false confessions to confuse the police and believed they would not hold any weight. Unfortunately, the police accepted his confessions, even though none of them matched each other or the evidence found at the scene. Despite Sanders being identified as present on the night of Amanda's murder, Billy was still charged with the crime. The case went to trial in 2004, with both sides trying to prove what actually happened that night. While Billy's lawyers argued that he was not involved in his daughter's death, the prosecutors alleged that both Billy and Sanders were in on it and had carried out the crime together. They used the lack of forced entry into the house as evidence that Billy had let Sanders in and then locked up again after he left. In conclusion, the murder of Amanda was a tragedy that left her family and community devastated. Although Billy was falsely accused, the case highlights the importance of thorough investigations and careful consideration of evidence to ensure justice is served. According to Cope's attorneys, the prosecutors in his case manipulated the evidence to conceal their inappropriate interrogation tactics. They argued that Cope was mentally unstable and devastated by his daughter's death, making him susceptible to false confessions. The defense was denied the opportunity to present crucial evidence to the jury by Judge John C. Hayes III, who claimed it could lead to a logical fallacy. This excluded evidence included the fact that Sanders, the main suspect, committed 4 sexual assaults in the weeks following Amanda's murder, yet there was no evidence of forced entry. Sanders appeared to be skilled at entering without leaving a trace, making it unlikely that Cope helped him commit the crime. In addition, a jailhouse informant testified that Sanders had confessed to raping and killing a little girl in Rock Hill, but this testimony was not allowed in court. Despite this evidence pointing towards Cope's innocence, he was convicted of conspiracy and given a life sentence without parole in 2004, along with Sanders. The defense appealed the verdict in 2009, and a 3-judge panel from the South Carolina Court of Appeals overturned the conspiracy conviction, citing a lack of evidence that Copeland and Sanders knew each other. However, the South Carolina Attorney General appealed this decision, and it was overturned. In 2013, Cope was charged with his daughter's murder, and despite the evidence pointing to his innocence, he remained in prison. On February 9, 2017, Cope passed away at the age of 53 due to natural causes while in state custody. It is clear that the evidence used in Cope's trial was flawed and manipulated to fit the prosecutor's narrative. Despite this, Cope was not given a fair trial and was denied the opportunity to prove his innocence. Whether he was guilty or not remains unknown, but it is clear that justice was not served in this case. Ladies and gentlemen, we have just heard the tragic tale of Amanda Cope's murder and the harrowing ordeal her father Billy faced thereafter. What are your thoughts on this case? Do you believe Billy was innocent or guilty? And most importantly, do you think justice was truly served for Amanda Cope? We value your opinions, so please share them in the comments below. Additionally, if you found this video informative, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Stay safe and thank you for tuning in.